Om Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning we're going to meditate few minutes. After the meditation, Venerable Sanatha Bihari is going to give a Dhamma talk. After Dhamma talk, question and answer and chanting. Before we start meditation, I want to say a few things. Few days ago, I believe yesterday or day before yesterday, Most Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Buddhist monks in the from Vietnam. He's originally from Vietnam, but he's very famous around the world, everywhere, especially Western world and the European world also. He passed away yesterday or day before yesterday. So we miss him lots of. He's a great master, but we wish him reach the nirvana. Thinking about that, and please do little bit meditation, 2 minutes. Then after that, we will start Dhamma talk. So you can meditate whatever meditation, either metta meditation or either breathing meditation or and whatever meditation you can do. Please until hear the bell. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right now, time to start the Dhamma talk. Venerable Sanatha Bihari, you can start your Dhamma talk right now.
Thank you, Bante. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank the abbot of the International Buddhist Meditation Center and the members of the Mahasangha for this invitation. Also, brothers and sisters in Dhamma and Buddhist friends, thank you for having me here again. Unfortunately, we're still online and not in person. I wish I could go back there. I miss that neighborhood. There's where I grew up down the street on Vermont and 8th. Yeah. But before I start my talk, it's a beautiful picture that the center just shared about when Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh was there. That was such a nice picture I think I saw. But yes, okay. So the other day, a couple of friends came to visit me. They're all Latinos and Latinas, and they brought a new friend along. And we meditated and we talked, and I had to step away because I had a conference call that I had to take. And when I came back, they brought up a question about matriarchy and egalitarianism, and that a lot of these things, well, they thought that they found some of these things in Buddhism, and was there any relationship or any connection to these things? Can we find some aspects in the Dhamma that lean towards, or that point towards, or have some dimension of matriarchal societies and egalitarianism? I wasn't well prepared for it at that time. I told them whatever I could, and I don't think I'm well prepared now. But I'll give it a shot again. Maybe this time it'll come out a little bit better. So matriarchal, right? Yeah, I think there's definitely some strong indications of that. Yeah, if we just look at the name of the Buddha. So when we look at the suttas, we mostly see it say Gautama Buddha, right? So whose name is that, Gautama? Well, that's the maternal line. That's his maternal line name. So they didn't take the father's name. The men in that place had the name of Sakya, right? That's why in some places you do find, even in the suttas, especially in the earlier part, like in the Sutta Nipata, you find Sakya Muni. Well, they're referring there to the sage of the Sakyans, but that's not his name, right? That's like a title that they gave him. Buddha's also like a title, but here they're using Gautama. And to be honest, when the Buddha refers to himself, he usually uses the Tathagata. Doesn't really use his name or anything like that. But we do see, Gautama Buddha a lot more often. So it's very interesting, that at least within the Sakyan kingdom, it appears that they would take their mother's last name. So that's some indication, right? Especially if we compare it to, at least for us in the West, what has been the case most of the time, where you take the father's name and not the mother's name. I mean, now in certain Western countries, it's kind of like, whichever one works in more liberal parts of the nation. So I think that's a very good indication. Also, when the Buddha sets examples, right? Like in the loving kindness, Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha gives the example of a mother, right? In the same way that a mother would risk her own life to protect her one and only child. To that extent, we should develop metta towards all beings. Also, the Buddha did a very unique thing in his time, although it's not perfect according to, our perspective, modern perspective of society. He allowed for the ordination of bhikkhunis, which, very radical thing to do at that time, controversial. I think that's why many of the monks weren't so happy with it, and they kind of established these extra rules for the bhikkhunis to follow, because the monks themselves weren't happy about it. And the Buddha saw this. He saw there was going to be some conflict, but at the end of the day, when really when he was really asked about, can they attain awakening or not, the Buddha said yes. There's no difference. So I guess the Buddhist hesitation was more on a pragmatic level, the consequences of it. I mean, they had already tried to kill the Buddha many times, and many people weren't happy with the Buddha, especially once his cousin Devadatta and Prince Ajatasattu got together, and they're like, "Oh, we'll rule the world. You'll be the next Buddha, and I'll be the next king, and this way we'll take over the world, like Pinky and the Brain or something." And it kind of turned out that way for them too, right? They didn't get their way, so exactly like Pinky and the Brain, they never got to take over the world. So yes, I think we can see a lot of these kind of things. And one time I asked my teacher Bante Kolita about examples about like when the Buddha did these kind of, I don't know, when he kind of showed women more respect than at that time was usually given. And I wasn't aware of this, but he told me that on the day that Mahapajapati, Arahant Mahapajapati, was about to reach Mahaparinibbana, the monks were all going to go and the Buddha was going to go on alms round. And at that time, the Buddha knew, because the Buddha could wake up. He'd wake up in the morning. He knew things that were going to happen, and he saw that day Mahapajapati was going to reach Mahaparinibbana, and that day when they were going on alms round, usually Buddha in the front, monks, then junior monks, then bhikkhunis later, like somewhere else. But that day, the Buddha told Mahapajapati, "Oh, you can go in front. You go in front of me, and you can go on alms round." I don't know of any other situation where anyone else goes in front of the Buddha. I can't think of any situation. It's very difficult. And yeah, I know even once Venerable Mahakassapa felt very shy because someone offered food to the Buddha thinking it was Mahakassapa, and then that person, realizing that it wasn't Mahakassapa, put his hand into the Buddha's bowl, took out the food, and tried to put it back in Mahakassapa's bowl. And then after that day, Mahakassapa's like, "I'm never going on alms round with the Buddha again." And that's one of the reasons why he stayed in the forest. He already liked being in the forest, but that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for Mahakassapa not to go on alms round with the Buddha again. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the Buddha, definitely saw women very different than the people at his time, and he allowed not only spiritual freedom awakening, but also by letting them become bhikkhunis, like a social freedom, because in those days, I don't know how to say this, women were like property almost. It was very difficult situation for women in that part of the world at that time. And when you read the Therigatha, which are the verses of the nuns, you see the nuns themselves, like you think they would talk a lot about like jhana, awakening, and insight, but there's a lot of like practical or mundane happiness that they find in being nuns. They say things like, "I don't have to take care of that wicked husband," and stuff like that, and I don't have to see like my mother-in-law. Thanks, now that I'm a nun, I'm free from all the housework, and I don't have to do all of that, right? So that was a new opening in society was available to them. Even if they didn't reach awakening, they had a better life. In some sense, it's very hard to be a bhikkhuni. If you read the stories, they didn't get much food or bowls or robes, but even then, it allowed another way of being, right? Not perfect, but another way of being that wasn't there before. So I think, there's many other cases. I encourage all of you to read the suttas and find more examples. And there's kind of like a shortcut you can take if you read Bhikkhu Bodhi's book on I forgot what it's called, something about like disciples of the Buddha or something like that. And he has examples of all like arahants and the arahantis and the monks and nuns and laymen and laywomen. And right there you can see a lot of examples of many prominent female women Buddhist figures. So you can find for yourself. It's a very good book. I forget the title of it right now. But if you want to learn more, then you can learn more there. Egalitarianism, definitely. It's very interesting. If we look at the like Mahaparinibbana Sutta and other suttas, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta starts off with like 7 advices to follow, right? because I guess King Ajatasattu wanted to conquer the Vajjians, which were at that time the only republic left. I think it said that there was like they had hundreds or thousands of rajas. So Raja, I guess, didn't mean king; it just meant like leaders, right? At that time, can't imagine a kingdom with like hundreds of kings. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe lords or something like that. And the reason that they were so strong, the Buddha said, is because they were united. They came together. They figured things out. They voted for things. He said, this is the way you should. This is the way. These are the 7 advices that he gives to nations and people. And he also uses this kind of same examples. He says, I gave these teachings to the Vajjians myself. And we find these same kind of like egalitarian, democratic dimensions in the Sangha, right? So there really isn't like, at least in the suttas themselves, there really isn't like a hierarchy of monks that you see there. It's just based on seniority, right? There's like no ranking system. Once you become a bhikkhu, you're just a bhikkhu, and that's it. Like there isn't any other kind. Nowadays, for I guess more societal, pragmatic purposes, each like Theravada country gives monks like different positions, right? And kind of I guess rankings, but we don't find that in the time of the Buddha really. The people are just acknowledged. The monks are just acknowledged to their seniority, and everyone has equal votes. And we see this kind of like egalitarian democratic thing play out in the first schism, right? So how did the first schism happen? Well, they took a vote, right? And the majority won, so they were able to go their own way. And then the others remain the way they wanted to remain. So even hundreds of years after the Buddha, this democratic egalitarian spirit within the Sangha of taking votes to see what they should do still remained, and it still does. Here in my temple, we have an abbot. We have a vice abbot. But before we make any decisions, like all the monks come together and we all talk about it, and we try to see what we're gonna do. And instead of the chief monk just making decisions on his own and be like, well, you just got to deal with it. I'm the boss here. There isn't this kind of sense of the boss. Right. And even the Buddha, when he passed away, again in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, he didn't leave a boss behind. Right. They asked him, like, who's going to be the big shot? And he's like, let the Dhamma be your big shot. Right. And how do we let the Dhamma be our big shot? He goes, well, by practicing Satipatthana, actually. That's one of the things that, when you see this quote online, it kind of says like, oh, be your own island, be your own light, let the Dhamma be your teacher. They missed the next part then, because he says, well, how do we do this, right? How do we do this, Bhante? And the Buddha says, oh, by practicing Satipatthana, that's how you do this, right? So it's not an invitation for you to make up your own Buddhist way or for you to do whatever you want and justify it as like, oh, the Buddha said, there's no teacher, so I'll do whatever I want. No, if you read the following lines, the Buddha tells us what he means by being your own light and being your own island and following the Dhamma, letting the Dhamma be your teacher. So I just wanted to give that out there because it's like one of those Buddhist memes that gets used for like any reason, or for wanting to be lazy or to justify whatever you're doing with Dhamma. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the Sangha, the way the Buddha set up the Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sangha, you do see it more horizontal than vertical, especially compared to the time of the Buddha. When it came to like teachers, gurus, you can't talk back, you can't question. Then in the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha says you can't question, even the teacher, you can question. So we do see a lot of these things, Is it 100% matriarchal? No. Is it 100% egalitarian? No, definitely not. The Buddha and the Sangha were limited by their time, right? Although the Buddha, is the Devati Deva, the God of gods, Buddha still has limits too. Buddha couldn't do everything that he wanted. He couldn't save his own people. The Sakyans got completely massacred by the neighboring kingdom. He couldn't save them. He couldn't save, many of the people that were around him that he loved. They ended up dying. That's the way things are. The Buddha wanted to help people many times and he couldn't help them. So I think in a similar way, the Buddha was very much limited by that time, and I think that the Sangha and the Buddha try to make it as egalitarian, as harmonious, as wholesome. Samma. That's Samma means, so usually we say right, but Samma means like wholesome or harmonious. So Samma, the Buddha tried to create the Sangha in the most harmonious way that he could at that time. We're always limited by our conditions. We are products of our environment, and we live in an environment, and we have a relationship. And we can see when the Buddha did push to make different kinds of changes, he got strong backlashes. The Brahmins were not very happy with him a lot of the time, and the Katiyas, the kings, were also not very happy with him many times. He had a better relationship with the merchants. It's very interesting. That's a talk for another day. How it seems like the class that most resonated with the Buddha were the merchant class at that time, which were the rising class, and they were there opposing the traditional kingly system or lord system that was there around at that time. Well, I don't think I gave a better answer than I did to my friends the other day. But these are things I think that we should think about more. And we can't go back in time and see exactly how it was, and there's always new evidence coming up, and we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle. But I think it's very important for us to try to see the Dhamma, to try to see Buddhism from different perspectives, right? Different perspectives, even ones you don't agree with, and see what's there. Try to see the Dhamma from all these different angles. I mean, Samaditi, Samaditi, what is Samaditi? Usually right view, but we can say a comprehensive. Sama can also mean comprehensive or wholesome view, right? Seeing it from all angles, like the simile of the elephant, right? Some of us might see the Dhamma like, oh, this is the trunk of the elephant. We grab the Dhamma from the trunk and we're like, oh, this is a hose. Or we grab the Dhamma from the tail and go like, oh, this is a brush. The Dhamma's like a brush. Or we grab the Dhamma by the horns and, oh, the Dhamma's like a spear. But the Buddhism Dharma is big. It's wide, and the more angles, the more perspectives we can get on it, more complete. Samma Ditti, the more complete view we'll have on this. So I think that's it. That's all I got for you today. I'm open to questions or comments now.
I have a question.
Yes, Selvin.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Bhante, for the. Actually, I thought you did an amazing job because I got thinking about structure, by the way, because in a way we do need structured, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's out of necessity. But I think this is what I was thinking about. The limit is of the previous structure that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, letting go of that previous structure is kind of a way of liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in that way, I want to be liberated by the way that I was before, not the way that I should be. That's what I'm thinking. I one comment about the nuns that they're practical, and you were saying how they don't have to deal with this mother-in-law or the wicked husband. That's a kind of liberation already for them.
Yeah.
So I don't. I mean, I know that in the Mahayana tradition they have the Bodhisattva concepts, and to me it kind of makes sense. Once you kind of find yourself liberated, like it's not you that is, and I don't want to use the word the problem, but it's the people around you. So you're like, yeah, I can do this lifetime again because I can be free of these things that were constraining me in this lifetime. And in the case of the nuns, would be mother-in-law, husband, their kids. I don't know. What do you think of that? And thank you again, by the way.
Well, thank you first and foremost. yeah, definitely we want to try to free ourselves from the structure, but always making sure that we don't pull the carpet under from ourselves, right? Like if we're gonna remove what's under, we got to make sure there's something else there, or we're gonna step on something else there, you know. So I know we always have to proceed with caution. And yeah, definitely that is a sort of liberation, to be free even from the mundane. I mean, it's important. If we neglect the mundane, then we set ourselves up to kind of like let all the bad things happen, you know. So we can't I think it's sometimes tempting, right, like in spirituality or religion, to kind of dismiss the everyday pragmatic mundane things as like, well, that's not the real Dhamma, or that's not real Buddhism, you know, like. And that kind of leaves space for like, for the, you know, more nefarious characters in society to kind of take that up, right? Because we're not really there engaging on that level. So I think we do kind of need to have like a focus more on like humanistic, pragmatic Buddhism of everyday, you know, like just like saying hi to people, being friendly, practicing metta with like the cashiers at Starbucks and stuff like that, and not just be like, here, you know, whatever, and say thank you for the drink and saying thank you when you get off and off the bus. So I think, yeah, we definitely need to, and with social issues and talking to your boss too. You know, you don't have to patiently endure all the abuse that your boss or whoever, you know, gives you, thinking, you know, that's like some Buddhist virtue to let yourself get beat up. There has to be some engagement on the everyday level. So I hope I addressed what you're asking, Sylvan.
Yes, I mean, I don't mean, by the way, I didn't mean that we don't engage in it. And I think that's what I've taken out of practicing Buddhism. To me, it's not obtaining liberation in this lifetime, is for me to be better in this lifetime. And you know, however lifetimes it gets me to be liberated. But I think even if I got to that point, I'd be like, I want to come back. I don't know. It's interesting the way that I'm thinking about that. But yes, I do agree with you that it's not disengaging, but how you re-engage back, the structure that you put back in. So I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Dhammapada verse, right? Like drop by drop, the cup gets filled, or the jar gets filled. Life by life, little by little.
Many lifetimes for me. So thank you again.
I think I'm sorry, I didn't keep track, but I think Hannah and then Victor.
Ante, thank you. I'm glad you raised the issue of women in Buddhism. I appreciated hearing what you had to say. And I just wanted to make a comment, and maybe there are other people who know more about this who could say it better than I can. But when I started studying at IBMC in the 90s, Reverend Sarika was my teacher, and also Venerable Karuna was the abbess at that time. And one of the reasons why I really liked coming to IBMC is I believe that they were fully ordained as monks, not simply as nuns. And you know, we started this meditation honoring Thich Nhat Hanh, who, as you mentioned, visited IBMC. And he was also a friend of Dr. Thich Thien An, I believe, who founded IBMC. And Dr. Thich Thien An, if I'm not mistaken, felt strongly that women should be able to be fully ordained and not to be relegated to being nuns. I just thought I would say that and say thank you for the talk.
Thank you for all that insight about the history of International Buddhist Meditation Center. I didn't know all of that. I'm not that familiar with it, only what's on the website and what I've heard from other people, but thank you for sharing that with me. Victor, then Pascal.
Victor, you're up.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for your talk. I was thinking as you were talking how happy Reverend Karuna would have been for your talk today. Also, Dr. Thich An was Dharma brothers with Dr. Thich Nhat Hanh. So they had a history together.
Thank you for that. Oh, I'm learning today. You know, the tables have turned now. I'm on the other side learning. That's the beautiful thing about life, right? Sometimes, some moments we're on this side, sometimes we're on the other side. Thank you so much, Victor. Pasquale?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. Thank you so much. What was the name of that sutra? You said that the Buddha gave advice to the kings on how to be good rulers.
So what the one I was talking about is the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. It's in the beginning, and it's really about like how to run a good group or community. It's like about forming a community.
Oh, and they could use that advice to how to rule a kingdom too.
Yes, I guess it wouldn't really be a kingdom then. It would be more like a democracy, a republic. Yeah, the Vajrayans were a republic.
Oh, but it wasn't just for the Sangha, it was for the lay people.
Yes, right there. He originally used it for the Sangha, and then he taught it to the Republic of the Vajrayans, and then he related to the king Ajatasattu also.
Okay, I want to talk about a few interesting perspectives briefly and ask you a question.
Okay.
But one interesting phenomena is it seems like living beings tend to exaggerate how much happier or how much more miserable we are than people in the past or than the future could be.
Mm.
And I say that with a little bit of experience because look at all the labor-saving devices that we have. When I was young, we didn't have a lot of this technology, and everybody thought it would make life so much easier. But I learned in an analogy that most of these technological advances are used for job competition. When I was a boy, my first job, we didn't even really need a phone. A phone really helped. People that came from a culture, we mostly in my area, it was the Irish Protestants, they already had phones. So they could get a job better because they could easier and faster because they could call up and make a verbal connection. But I had to go and talk to the people and then get a letter or come back and check, get something in the mail. So I don't really believe in this myth that technology or change is going to lead us to great happiness. So my question to you is kind of an interesting one because I thought about this. How do you personally look at the Dharma and any way that you understand Dharma in terms of how does our Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, say the generic Dharma, not Theravada or Vajrayana or Zen, how does that kind of look, how do you put that in relationship with like established traditions like Judaism, Catholicism, Islam? How do you look at Dharma? I have my own personal view, but I'd wonder because I feel that's part of because our Dharma is our guiding light. We shouldn't be manipulating Dharma to get what we want socially. I think we should use the Dharma as our guide. And I wondered how you looked at our Dharma and our Dharma practice in relationship to all these other great traditions that basically promise pretty much the same thing with different wrappings and words.
That's a highly complex, multi-layered, like, whoa, huge, like you could write a whole dissertation on that. Myself, I mean, there's many, it depends how we're talking about like Dhamma, because even Dhamma itself in the context, it means different things, right? In one sense, Dhamma can be just reality, the way things are. The Dhamma, like experience, it's just reality, So,
but Dharma, I mean Dharma in terms of the liberative doctrine, like the Buddha said, there are many teachings, but they all have the same taste, kind of like the salt and water. There's distinctive sensation.
Yeah, so that reminds me of a time where the Buddha said, any teaching that has the Eightfold Path in it will lead to liberation, right? So we can say like any Dharma that has the Dharma is the Eightfold Path, right? When we talk about like the teaching, the practice that way. So in that sense, I think we can just put in that Eightfold Path, and if wherever we find the Eightfold Path, then that is the Dhamma, the Dharma.
So for me, I was raised a Catholic, and my mom forced me to be a Catholic, and I wanted to be a Buddhist when I was 6 years old. And this is a true story. I'm not making this up because I'm old and getting senile. But she forced me to become a Catholic. I told her I wanted to be a Buddhist because I had met some Buddhists and I heard about the Buddha. My uncles would talk about Buddha, and my whole world, like we were in the kitchen and they would talk about the Buddha, and I became alive. Like I became a real person. Like I thought this was reality.
Mm.
But my mom said, well, you can become a Buddhist. You can pick your own religion when you become an adult. So I understand her wisdom now because there's so many forces that are religiocentrics in a sense.
Mm.
And I personally believe, although it's not easy to prove, but I believe there's a lot of nature spirits and some kind of spirits that kind of like one religion over another. So I was kind of lucky in a sense. But you know, the Dalai Lama says we always like to think our religion is the highest, but a good way to look at it is the other religions are Dharma protectors.
Mm.
So when I pray, I kind of put the Dharma, and sometimes it's not easy because I was so brainwashed as a Catholic.
Mm.
So anyway, that's kind of what I was asking. How do you put the Dharma? Is it like really connected to do you see the Dharma in all the religious traditions, like the aspiration to bring happiness and freedom from suffering to the individual and to all mankind?
I think, yeah, we can see little pieces of it everywhere, you know, and I think that's what actually like many Abrahamic traditions would say, right? Like you can find the teachings of God in all the other ones also. So I think that's a very, this kind of like more universal perspective is something that's, you know, we can kind of apply in general to almost all religions or philosophies or spiritualities, but there are some very unique things about what the Buddha proposes, right? Like non-self, right? And like no real like creator God. So in that sense, you know, if we put that as part of the Dharma, then there is some parts that we will not find in other ones. But I say in general, you know, like don't be a jerk, right? Like work on yourself and do these kind of things and try to live well in society and honor your ancestors. Like those are general things I think that we can all agree upon. In bringing it back to the Dalai Lama, I think that's what he's been trying to work on, like these kind of like secular ethics, right? That we can all get behind and create a more harmonious world. So in that sense, yes, but you know, in a more strict sense, there would be places where we have to say no. We don't find the Dharma in other views or perspectives.
Yeah, I don't have any answers, but thank you so much. I thought my question would be kind of wholesome. I'm a little worried about taking you know, they say don't take the law into your own hand, but what do you do when the law is unjust? But I kind of feel we have this idea of pick and choose to the point where we have this culture of pick and choose because we have so many choices. We go to the supermarket and who needs 500 kinds of potato chips, but people like it. But what I'm getting at is I think we need to strengthen our bonds with the religious traditions as they're practiced in other countries. And my dream is every group should have at least one celibate monk or nun that is the guiding light. And then we kind of try to use social change from the point of view of true practice, which is actually a lot more radical than like even like Che Guevara or Lincoln or Washington. You know, the Buddha talked about a total ahimsa where we give up our life and to practice Dharma. It's not like, well, oh wait, time out. I gotta save 1,000 people, so I don't want to get killed now because oh king, don't kill me because I got to go save 1,000 people. But I feel that's kind of the human way of thinking, but I think Dharma is way beyond that. And I think once we start getting the sense of it, it is liberating. It's like the elephant's footprint, like the Buddha said, or Sariputra said, the Dharma is like the elephant's footprint, where all the other ideas and concepts fit into that, and teachings fit into the lion's paw fits inside the giraffe's hoof, except, well, probably the whale's flippers probably wouldn't fit in there. But they might not have been aware of whales. Maybe they were. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, Bante. I think we passed our time,
Okay.
right, Bante?
All right. Thank you so much again. Hope to see you again sometime. Okay. Take care of
Yes,
yourself.
Bante. Thank you.
All right. When it's I think the Tom or Victor is talking about the Thich Nhat Hanh. Of course, the Venerable our founder, Venerable Dr. Thich Thien Nhan and the Thich Nhat Hanh, both are I think Dhamma brothers, as you mentioned. They study together. I think they are coming same temple, same area. Of course, the both are great masters. So again, we wish him to reach the nirvana. And thanks again for everybody for the Sunday service today to participate for the Sunday service. Next Sunday, I believe that I think last Sunday of this month, which is the 30th of the January, Reverend Kusala is going to give Dhamma talk. The first Sunday of the February, I believe either 6 or 7, I think 6, February 6. We're going to celebrate a little bit about Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, Vietnamese New Year, whatever Lunar New Year we can say. Mr. Nam is going to give a little talk about the New Year. That's it, the announcement. So we'll turn page 4 and page 10. Hope to see you next Sunday again. Tasso bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Tasso bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhagavato
arahato
samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhamma
Saranam gacchami.
Sangham
Saranam gacchami. Sentence beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Deluding peasants are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's ways. I vow to attain. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all, and the sick find relief. May all merits be extended
to everyone.
That we together with all beings may gaze Buddha's way. Om Mani Padme Hum. Dhamma and Sangha, you all be well and happy. Thank you again. See you next Sunday.